Hi, I'm Adam Sussman, Director of Research at TABB Group, joined by Kevin McPartland, Senior Analyst at TABB Group. And man, that was quite a read, wasn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, although I have enjoyed months of reading and rereading legislation, today we finally have a bill signed by the President, and it's time to sort of move on to the next step.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we were talking about, this is just the end of the beginning where a lot of rules still need to be written by the SEC and CFTC to, among other things, define what an SEF is. But what we were talking about earlier was, what's kind of like the first impact of this bill? What's the first thing that this bill is really going to have an impact on?
Well, one change that takes effect immediately is the credit rating agencies, who I think probably take a lot of the blame for the credit crisis, and we can get into that later, will be liable for the ratings that they put on to bond issuances. So what seems to have happened already, and this was talked about today in the Wall Street Journal, was that the rating agencies have said firms issuing bonds can no longer put the ratings in the prospectus because that would leave them liable. And they said until they understand more what this bill means, and clearly there's a lot to understand, they're going to hold back from doing that.
Right. Yeah, and it would also appear that one of the some of the critics of the credit rating agency said, well, there needs to be more competition in this space, and it would seem that one of the consequences of this fear over liability would be smaller players being squeezed out because they probably don't even have the financial wherewithal to be able to insure themselves against investor lawsuits.
Well, absolutely. The big three clearly have big legal teams, have lots of capital behind them. So ultimately they will figure it out, and they'll come up with an operating model that makes sense going forward, even with these new laws. But you're absolutely right. Smaller firms, some of this new regulation could be onerous. The same could be seen to be true for, as you mentioned before, swap execution facilities. So small upstarts with a lot of technology, if they're required to have 6 compliance people on staff, that already could make it impossible for them to register and come online. Clearinghouses have their own consequences. So additional regulation and oversight is good, but if it limits competition, that's not so good.
Sure. And one of our other analysts, Matt Simon, wrote a piece about hedge fund regulation and how there's some substantial new requirements for them on the compliance side that they're going to have to beef up on. So it's kind of interesting that that liability and being able to withstand investor lawsuits actually in a way increases too big to fail, right? Because only those firms that are big enough to have enough capital to withstand that type of liability actually, can continue to exist in this way.
True, and it's a shame. I mean, you see over and over again with the economy trying to recover that the small businesses really need to have some backing to be able to grow, because that's where a lot of the sort of overall economic growth come from. And I don't think that's too different here. Just like someone could sue McDonald's for spilling hot coffee on them. If it's small, if the same thing happened to a small deli, that just wouldn't work. And we could see the same if it doesn't allow some of these upstart sort of bright technology firms to come in with innovative new solutions. You're right, maybe they'll just see the regulatory hurdles as too great and take their technology into another market or another industry.
Yeah, well, hopefully now that we're moving into the rule-making stage of this process with the SEC and CFTC, probably already starting down that path, that they'll implement this financial reform in such a way as to encourage innovation rather than stamp it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, the legislators, the regulators, everybody else in Washington, they don't want to drive business out of the U.S. They want to keep the U.S. capital markets as liquid and vibrant as they have been for the last, 2 centuries. So I think despite all of the politics and the bipartisan issues, when it comes down to it, everybody in the government wants to see the U.S. prosper, and I'm sure we'll see that in the final rules.
Right. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that, and we look forward to reading a lot more large stacks of paper like this one. Again, Adam Sussman, Director of Research at TABB Group, and Kevin McPartland, Senior Analyst. Thanks for joining us.